What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. I hope you're doing well today, wherever you may be watching this video. I'm here right outside Atlanta, in the metro Atlanta area, and it's finally cooling down. It's October, y'all, and we had like mid 90-degree weather last week. So finally this week we got like 60-degree, 70-degree weather. So it's feeling more like fall. So that's cool. So, I got the jacket on for the first time in a long time. But I wanted to come to you and give you some more nuggets about authentic dialogue to help you all have thriving relationships. And today I want to talk about tolerance, and tolerance being something that we must activate when we get into a conflict or disagreement with someone, as a way to relieve the stress that occurs when we're confronted with beliefs and ideas that don't align with our own. And that creates a level of stress automatically. It's a stress response that we have called cognitive dissonance. And so tolerance is the ability to tolerate the existence of behaviors and beliefs that you don't necessarily agree with. Tolerance is accepting that we are all unique and complex as individuals, and it relieves us of the stress of feeling like everyone must be the same. So when you activate tolerance, it's, again, when you make that conscious decision that I'm going to be tolerant of the beliefs and the behaviors that I don't necessarily agree with the people I'm in a relationship with, whether they be, partners, romantic partners, whether it be children, whether it be business partners, etc. And with the caveat that those behaviors and beliefs aren't like causing you physical or emotional harm to an extreme level, but just in the everyday, signals getting crossed, or decision-making processes where people are just going about their life being themselves, and it bothers you, or it creates some type of disagreement or conflict. By activating tolerance when both parties decide to sit down and talk about whatever the issue may be, it'll relieve you again of that mental stress that arises. So, when you're in a relationship with people, the fact of the matter is, they're going to show up as themselves. And, we tend to get into arguments as a way of relieving that stress. We get into these arguments where, again, we get into that pattern of, people having their feelings hurt or saying mean things to confront that conflict or that disagreement, as opposed to activating tolerance. Activating tolerance is another part of the cheat code that is authentic dialogue, because when you are in relationship with someone, eventually you're going to learn to tolerate their behaviors anyway, because, there's a level of that relationship bond. And again, we're not talking about extremes, so stick with me on this. So, there's going to be a level of having to accept it. I'll use my children as an example. My kids, they have, certain nuances and intricacies in their behaviors that are extremely annoying. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate, but that's my children. And ultimately I can either choose to continually be annoyed, or I can learn to tolerate that they have certain behaviors and certain beliefs in the ways they show up that just are different than mine. And by tolerating it, I give myself permission almost. It's like giving myself permission. It's like making that mental switch to give myself permission to include their behaviors, their beliefs, their ideas, etc. in my worldview. It doesn't mean I have to accept them as my own, but I can include that as a part of the world so it doesn't continue to bump up against, my sensibilities in a way that hurts me and causes harm in the form of stress. So, that's really important. And again, same thing in personal relationships, the same thing, just activate tolerance, and it just it's like a pressure release. Why is it so hard? Why does cognitive dissonance happen? Because we've been raised in a society that has indoctrinated us in the ways that make us think that like everyone's the same. In our religious traditions, there's this level of consistency in the ways that people are supposed to act. They're supposed to behave. They're supposed to show up. And we grew up, for those of us who grew up in those religious traditions with these very standardized norms, that becomes our wiring. Also in our education system, we grew up in the education system for those who participated in conventional education, where there's standards, there's ways of being, there's benchmarks that say that you have to be a certain, you should be a certain way and know a certain amount of information at a certain amount of time at a certain age. And all these, for the formative years of our lives, we're raised in a very regimented way that says everyone should be doing the same thing, should know the same things, should believe the same things, etc. And if you don't believe those same things, then there's something wrong with you, or you have a deficiency if you don't know those certain things. So these are the things that we're battling with in our wiring and our indoctrination. And then when we get in relationships with people as adults and people don't show up in a very familiar way, it causes that stress. So again, I gave this kind of example yesterday in a video when I talked about empathetic listening and empathetic questioning, where we get in these arguments with the people we care about and the people we love, right? Or the people we're in partnership with in business or relationships, etc. And ultimately, we end up making those slight adjustments anyway to tolerate who they are anyway. So it's like streamlining that whole process so that we don't have to go through that stress, don't have to go through the arguments if you show up in a way where you're able to activate tolerance and the person that you're in relationship with does the same thing. So, so if you're watching these videos for the first time, you may be thinking like, man, this sounds pretty hard to do, especially if the other person isn't doing the same thing. And you're absolutely right. One of the first videos I did, I said that, both parties have to opt in to participate in authentic dialogue. It is literally impossible to do this on your own if the other person isn't agreeing to do it with you. You're going to be on two different wavelengths, two different communication paradigms. So it's important that both parties, opt in to saying this is how we're going to handle disagreements and learn these skills. So that's what I have for you today. And I want to also say this, because a lot of people, when they hear this, they think about, well, what about if people are causing harm? What about if it's toxic, relationship is toxic, or there's toxic behaviors that are causing harm, physical harm, emotional abuse, and things like that. Boundaries, folks. This doesn't mean that you can't set boundaries for yourself. Within the context of authentic dialogue, if someone's not meeting you halfway, if someone is not, if someone is showing up in ways that are harmful, it is absolutely okay to set boundaries for yourself. I just want to say that as well. So that's what I have for you today. Ultimately, this leads to a point where you are able to co-create solutions together. But that's another video that I'll do another day. So for now, I'll leave you with that. If this resonated in any way, if it makes sense, please share this video. And to watch the other videos, just click on the hashtag Let's Grow to Lunch. And until next time, I love y'all. Peace.